What if I told you that one of your favorite Halloween decorations, the Headless Horseman, is actually a 1,000-year-old Celtic death god that has been terrorizing humans across multiple continents and civilizations for centuries? This ancient supernatural entity transformed from genuine religious nightmare fuel into the Halloween entertainment that we love today, and this journey is more interesting than you might think. Fair warning, this video features AI art and historical interpretations that some viewers find personally offensive. Since we're discussing children's Halloween entertainment, I suggest channeling that energy into something more productive, like maybe a new Halloween costume or learning a new skill. I'm Alex Arnold, and this is Arnie's Brain Train. Today we're discovering how an ancient supernatural terror evolved into modern Halloween fun. All of my sources are meticulously researched and linked in the description and in the pinned comment below, from university presses to historical societies, so you can dive even deeper into this rabbit hole. Well, let's go check it out. Picture this. It's a dark October night. You're watching a classic Halloween movie, and that headless figure comes galloping through the mist. Your heart races, you pull the blanket up a little higher, and you think, thank goodness that's just a story. But what if I told you that people have been having the exact same reaction for over 1,000 years? Everyone knows the story. Ichabod Crane, the lanky schoolmaster, riding through the dark woods of Sleepy Hollow when suddenly, a headless figure on horseback appears, hurling what appears to be his own severed head. It's become the ultimate Halloween tale, spawned countless movies, TV shows, video games, and given generations of kids nightmares. But here's the thing, Washington Irving wasn't just making this up out of thin air. This story actually connects an ancient Celtic death deity, real Revolutionary War battlefields, immigrant folklore, psychological trauma, and the origins of Halloween itself. We're about to time travel through civilizations, witness the evolution of human fear, and discover how a terrifying religious figure became Halloween entertainment. The question isn't whether Irving created a fictional ghost, it's how this ancient Celtic death god managed to survive centuries of cultural evolution and transform from religious terror into Halloween fun that we can't get enough of. To really go back to the beginning of this story, we're going to get on the brain train and head back to ancient Ireland and Scotland, roughly 1,000 years ago. Picture misty highlands, stone circles, and Celtic warriors who believed that supernatural forces controlled life and death. These weren't people who scared easily. They were tough, battle-hardened folks who faced down Roman legions. But there was one figure that terrified them, the Dullahan. Now, the Dullahan was not a friendly neighborhood ghost. According to Irish mythology, documented by researchers like Patricia Lysott in her work The Banshee, the Irish Death Messenger, the Dullahan was Death's personal courier service. Imagine the Grim Reaper, but on horseback, and infinitely more terrifying. This was a real fear for medieval Celts. A headless rider on a massive black horse, carrying his own severed head tucked under one arm. But this head wasn't just a decoration. It could see everything, including through closed doors and shuttered windows. When the Dullahan galloped through your village, that head would scan the area like supernatural surveillance, searching for his target. And here's the spooky part that kept entire communities awake at night. When the Dullahan stopped riding, someone died. Not might die or could die, would die. The head would speak the name of the doomed person in a voice that sounded like the wind through a graveyard, and that person's fate was sealed. No appeals, no negotiations, no last-minute reprieves. But wait, it gets worse, or better depending on your perspective. The Dullahan had supernatural powers that would make modern horror movie villains jealous. He could appear anywhere instantly. His horse could leap over massive obstacles in a single bound. And here's the kicker. He was most active during Samhain, the ancient Celtic festival that we now call Halloween. The timing wasn't coincidence. Samhain was when the Celts believed that the veil between the living and the dead was the thinnest, when spirits could cross over and supernatural chaos could erupt. The Dullahan wasn't just a scary story, he was part of their religious understanding of death and the afterlife. Now, if I can digress for just a second, this story proves something interesting about human psychology and storytelling. The fact that this exact fear, a headless horseman bringing death, survived for centuries and crossed oceans, shows that Irving tapped into something primal and universal. When you get that chill watching a Headless Horseman movie, you're feeling the same terror that kept Celtic warriors checking over their shoulders on dark nights. Now let's fast forward in our story about 600 years, and those Celtic stories didn't just disappear. They packed their bags and sailed to the New World. Between the 1700s and the 1800s, massive waves of Irish and Scottish immigrants arrived in America, bringing their folklore, traditions, and yes, their terrifying stories about headless riders. These were bedtime stories, but they were also cultural DNA, passed down through generations. Irish grandmothers in places like New York's Hudson Valley would tell their grandchildren about the Dullahan, adapting the stories to their new American surroundings. Maybe instead of Irish countryside, the headless rider was spotted near American farms. Instead of Celtic stone circles, he might appear near colonial churches or battlefields. But here's where American history collides with ancient folklore in the most direct way possible. What happened in the Hudson Valley region where Irving lived and set his story? It had been a war zone during the Revolutionary War. We're talking about an area that saw some of the most brutal fighting between Continental troops, British forces, Hessian mercenaries, and guerrilla fighters. According to historian Bruce Chadwick in The Two American Presidents, the area around Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow was a constant battlefield. Picture this. For years, this peaceful farming community was terrorized by raiders, midnight attacks, burning buildings, and the constant threat of violence. The psychological impact was devastating. And here's a detail that surprises most people. Headless corpses were tragically common sights during and after the Revolutionary War. Cannonballs didn't just wound soldiers, they completely decapitated them. Artillery was brutal and indiscriminate. The very ground Irving walked on as a child was a massive graveyard filled with headless soldiers, particularly those Hessian mercenaries who fought for the British. But here's where it gets more interesting. Local historian Carl Carmer documented in The Hudson that there were actual reports of headless rider sightings around Sleepy Hollow in the early 1800s, decades after the war ended. Now, were these genuine supernatural encounters? Mass hysteria? War trauma manifesting as ghost stories? That's the mystery that makes this story so compelling. What we know for certain is that Irving wasn't writing in a vacuum. He was a young man surrounded by war veterans, widows, and communities still processing unimaginable trauma. When he made this Headless Horseman specifically a Hessian trooper whose head was carried away by a cannonball, he wasn't just being creative. He was giving form to the nightmares that still haunted his neighbors. Now let's get to the part that shows how Washington Irving was a literary genius and why his story became an instant American classic. He wasn't just writing a ghost story. He was creating America's first great piece of psychological horror that dealt with real cultural anxieties. Think about what the Headless Horseman represents in Irving's story. He's a foreign soldier, representing America's complicated relationship with European powers. He's literally faceless and therefore dehumanized, and he's trapped in an endless cycle of violence, doomed to repeat his nightly ride forever. This was Irving's brilliant way of processing America's complicated feelings about its revolutionary origins, the violence that created the nation and the foreign influences that shaped it. But there's another layer that makes this story fascinating from a psychological perspective. The war trauma that people in Irving's time experienced, what we now understand as PTSD, had no medical framework back then. People didn't have therapy, counselors, or support groups. Instead, they processed their trauma through folklore, ghost stories, and community storytelling. According to folklore scholar Maria Leach in The Beginning, ghost stories serve a crucial psychological function. They allow communities to confront their fears in a controlled, ritualized way. The Headless Horseman wasn't just entertainment, it was collective therapy. And here's something to help you appreciate Halloween on a new level. The reason Irving's story exploded in popularity and became a Halloween staple isn't just because it's scary. It's because it touches on deep, primal fears that transcend culture and time. Fear of death, fear of the unknown, fear of violence coming back to haunt us, fear of being pursued by something that we can't reason with or escape from. Halloween became the perfect home for the Headless Horseman because both traditions deal with the same fundamental theme: the thin boundary between life and death, between past and present, between the safe familiar world and the dangerous unknown. When you watch a Headless Horseman movie, decorate with a Headless Rider decoration, or tell spooky stories on Halloween night, you're participating in a tradition that connects ancient Celtic death mythology, American Revolutionary War trauma, Irish immigrant folklore, and our modern need to face our fears in a safe, entertaining way. All of this reveals that our popular culture isn't random entertainment. It's how we process historical trauma, ancient fears, and psychological truths that are too complex or uncomfortable to face directly. Every Halloween tradition, every monster movie, every ghost story serves this same function, helping us confront the things that scare us the most. Now we're going to talk about how powerful this story has become. The Headless Horseman has appeared in over 50 movies, dozens of TV shows, countless books, video games, theme park attractions, and has become one of the most recognizable Halloween symbols worldwide. But it's not just about entertainment, it's how this figure has evolved to reflect each generation's fears and anxieties. In the 1999 Tim Burton movie Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman became a tool of political conspiracy and revenge. In the TV series Sleepy Hollow, he was reimagined as an apocalyptic figure battling modern-day supernatural threats. Each adaptation tells us something about what that generation fears the most. But here's the really interesting part. Child psychologists like Dr. Bruno Bettelheim have studied why kids are so drawn to scary stories like the Headless Horseman. In his work, The Uses of Enchantment, he argues that the frightening folklore helps children process their own fears about death, abandonment, and the unknown in a safe context. When a kid dresses up as the Headless Horseman for Halloween, they're actually taking control of something that scares them, transforming from victim to victor. The tourism industry around Sleepy Hollow, New York, generates millions of dollars every October from visitors wanting to experience the Headless Horseman legend firsthand. The story has literally shaped the economy and identity of an entire region. That's the power of a good story that taps into universal fears and desires. And think about it like this. In our modern world of GPS, smartphones, and scientific explanations for everything, why are we still terrified by a 1,000-year-old story about a headless ghost? Because the fundamental fears it represents, being pursued by something inhuman, facing death, confronting the consequences of past violence, are as relevant today as they were in ancient Ireland or Revolutionary War America. So let's go ahead and summarize everything like we do in every episode to reveal something interesting about human nature, storytelling, and cultural evolution. The Headless Horseman isn't just one story. It's a cultural evolution spanning over 1,000 years and multiple continents. We started with the Celtic Dullahan, a supernatural manifestation of humanity's oldest fears about death and the unknown. Irish and Scottish immigrants carried this terror to America, where it collided with the real trauma of Revolutionary War battlefields littered with headless soldiers. Washington Irving's genius wasn't in creating something new. It was in recognizing that these ancient fears could explain and process the horror his community had lived through. He took Celtic supernatural terror, mixed it with American historical trauma, added his own psychological insights, and created a story that spoke to universal human fears about violence, death, and the past coming back to haunt us. The reason this became a Halloween tradition isn't coincidence. It's because Halloween itself comes from that same Celtic tradition of confronting death and the supernatural. The Headless Horseman found this perfect home in a holiday that was already designed to help humans face their deepest fears through ritual, costume, and community storytelling. So the next time someone asks if the Headless Horseman was based on a true story, you can tell them that it's actually more true than they ever imagined. It's based on ancient religious beliefs, historical wars, immigrant folklore, psychological trauma, and the timeless human need to transform terror into entertainment that we can control and enjoy. This story proves that the best folklore doesn't just entertain us. It helps us understand ourselves, our history, and our fears. It shows us that no matter how the world changes, certain human experiences remain constant across time and culture. And that's it for today, Brain Train passengers. How an ancient Celtic death god survived 1,000 years, crossed oceans, evolved through war trauma, and became the Halloween fun that we love today. What started as genuine religious terror that kept entire civilizations awake at night transformed into America's way of processing historical trauma and eventually became the entertainment that helps us face our fears while having a blast. This Halloween, when you see that headless rider galloping across your screen or decorating your neighbor's yard, you'll know that you're looking at a 1,000-year-old death god that somehow became our favorite spooky entertainment. Talk about the ultimate cultural evolution. If you want to see me explore more historical connections or other topics like this, smash that subscribe button and help me grow this curiosity crew. All of my sources are meticulously researched and linked in the description below. Seriously, dive deeper into this rabbit hole with university sources and historical information. It's worth it. Don't forget to drop a comment and let me know, did this completely change how you see the Headless Horseman legend? What other Halloween traditions should we investigate next? I read every single comment, and your ideas fuel future Brain Train adventures. And finally, we're here to transform those burning but why questions into thrilling discoveries, one epic journey at a time. Hit that notification bell so you never miss out on an adventure, and I'll see you on the next Brain Train departure. Until then, remember, history isn't always this simple, but it's always this interesting. We'll see you guys there. Bye.